Greetings, students. Mr. Little here, and on today's Bite of History, we're going to examine Islam and Christianity in medieval Africa. This comes from your textbook, Chapter 18, and this will be Part 3 of our look at Chapter 18. By the end of this history bite, you'll be able to answer the following questions. How did the introduction of Islam and Christianity shape the political structures of African states? And how did the introduction of Islam and Christianity shape the culture of Africa? So we'll start with Christianity. In the early days of Christianity, North Africa was in fact a major Christian center, perhaps the most important. One of the most important early Christian theologians, St. Augustine, was from North Africa. Christian monasticism, although it became very popular in Europe, was originally popularized in Egypt, again, part of North Africa. And while Christianity would gradually disappear from North Africa as a result of the expansion of Islam, North Africa nonetheless remained one of the most important early centers of Christianity. And to this day, there does remain a uniquely North African Christian church in what is now Egypt. And they make up about 15% of the population, and they're referred to as the Coptic Church. So one of the most important states involved in Christianity was the Kingdom of Axum in East Africa, which reigned up until about 1000 CE, and also has the distinction of being the earliest Christian state in history. That is a state that officially took Christianity as their religion. Now, in this Kingdom of Axum, even before Christianity, the elites and rulers practiced a kind of form of local Judaism by 300 CE. So already the leaders of Axum have their roots in the Abrahamic religions. Legend has it that Axum itself was founded by a descendant of the Jewish King Solomon. There's a legend that King Solomon had many wives, and legend has it that one of them was a queen from Ethiopia, and her child later went on to found the Kingdom of Axum. Around 350 CE, one of the kings of Axum was converted by a former slave to Christianity. There's a story about how this one slave convinced the king to convert to Christianity, but it's also possible that increasing contact with the Roman Empire and the Christian world led to this conversion to Christianity. That said, this particular form of Christianity in the Axum kingdom kept more of its Jewish features than European Christianity does. So in some ways, the Christianity in Axum looks more like Judaism than Christianity in, say, Europe or the United States. This would later become what we call the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, which was presided over by first the king of Axum and then later the emperor of Ethiopia. And one very unique thing about this church is that the church claims that they have something called the Ark of the Covenant and that it is in the city of Axum and under the protection of the king. Now, if you're not Christian, you may not know what the Ark of the Covenant is, but I'll keep it simple. It's a very, very important relic in Christianity. So super duper important. And the Ethiopian Orthodox Church claims to have it in Axum, but no one's allowed to see it. But it's a very important thing, and this place gets lots of pilgrims every year wanting to be close to this ark. Now, as we've already established, Islam was established in West Africa by merchants traveling across the Sahara. And perhaps they convinced some of their fellow merchants to convert for the ease of doing business between the Caliphate and the Kingdom of Ghana. Now, Ghana's rulers did not adopt Islam, not until the very end, but it was their successor, the Kingdom of Mali, that became very famously Islamic. Now, it's also interesting that the very first Mali ruler, Sundita, did not convert to Islam, but his successors very quickly did. And perhaps the most famous of them was Mansa Musa, who created a large number of mosques and libraries in Timbuktu and many of his cities, and took a famous multi-year Hajj to Mecca. He took this huge caravan, tons of camels, tons of gold, all the way to Mecca and back, giving out money along the way and demonstrating his generosity and proving that West Africa should be synonymous with gold. However, it's worth noting that most people in West Africa did not convert to Islam, and it remained a religion of the elites. And even the elites tended to not follow its strict code. Now, in East Africa, Islam was also introduced by merchants, but also by the Prophet Muhammad and some of his followers himself, who ran away to parts of North Africa when they were fleeing persecution in the early days of the community. It's a very interesting story. The king of Axum is said to have given refuge to Muhammad and some of his followers. And so Islam had a very early introduction into East Africa. Similar to West Africa, the leaders of the Swahili city-states did encourage Islam, and they built infrastructure that reflected their Islamic faith. In fact, Swahili itself is a combination of the Bantu language and Arabic. And up until the 20th century, Swahili actually used an Arabic script. That has since changed to the Latin alphabet. But Swahili itself was a symbol of Islam's presence in East Africa. But just kind of like in West Africa, only the people in the coastal cities converted to Islam, and in a lot of the surrounding communities until the 1700s, most people kept their traditional religions and their traditional beliefs. And this brings me to something called syncretism, which we've talked a little bit about already, but I want to kind of make clear that neither Christianity nor Islam actually wholly replaced native beliefs in Africa. Now, these religions provided a source of legitimacy, either to new leaders or old leaders. And the presence of Islam in particular drew large numbers of merchants who could be taxed and increase the wealth of the empire. But neither of these religions wholly replaced the native beliefs. And some examples of this would be that in Mali, a famous traveler named Ibn Battuta was complaining that women did not cover themselves with a veil. Even worse, he complained that the Sultan of Mali, although he called him the Sultan, he didn't go by that title, was, his servant girls walked around naked, and this was very forbidden in Islam. In the Ethiopian Orthodox churches, they are churches that are ostensibly Christian, but they're built in an Ethiopian Orthodox style. They are not built to look like churches from the Mediterranean or Europe. And also in Mali, although much later than the Mali kingdom, one of the ways that Sufis gained converts was to incorporate traditional spirits into their practices as guardian angels or sometimes evil angels. Islam does actually have a sort of system of angels and evil angels called jinn, and the Sufis incorporated a number of traditional spirits as jinn into their practice. And so syncretism is a major example. Africa is perhaps one of the best examples of syncretism in all of Unit 1 and 2 in terms of religions. So you should be able to answer those two essential questions from the first slide. Thank you so much for joining me for this history bite, and I'll see you next time.